how do you see the comic book hero characters evolving, sometimes differently from what their fan base is expecting?
First thing that we all have to do is tip our collective hat to the writers, artists, colorists, editors, publishers of the comic books. Mm-hmm. Take something like Batman, for example. Batman has been around nearly 75 years. And every Wednesday, the folks who produce those comic books have brought us back again and again and again to the comic book stores, in the old days, the candy stores and the drug stores, and the 7-Elevens, to find out what's happening next to this character. Who's the new villain going to be? What's the next twist and turn in the character or the story? To keep that up, to keep interest going for so many decades is an incredible creative accomplishment. Mm-hmm. So those folks don't get enough recognition and deserve it all. They really do. And that's where the whole thing starts. Once you have a character or characters that become ingrained in our society, ingrained in our culture, what you can't do, and what I have fought against, not always successfully, believe me, in the last 37 years in Hollywood, was the idea that filmmakers could come in and take these characters and just change them randomly, create something out of whole new cloth, and then send it back to the fans in celluloid or on film. And it's not going to work, because unless the integrity of the character is respected, and I don't mean it has to be the same thing. It can't be the same thing. Not when you're going from one medium to another. Mm-hmm. You know, any way you look at it, it's not purely Bob Kane and Bill Finger's Batman. It's Christopher Nolan's Bob Kane and Bill Finger's Batman. And but it's been true in the comic books alone as well. If you want to talk about purists, and believe me, you're talking to a comic book fan who has been a fan since I was 3. I learned to read from comics before I was 4, and have collected it. I attended the first ever comic book convention held on this planet when I was in 7th grade. And more recently, I've donated 45,000 comic books from my collection to Indiana University's Lilly Library, its rare book library. So you're talking to a total fanboy here. And take Batman. Over the decades, that character has changed and transformed and morphed so much in terms of his look, in terms of his tone, in terms of his story. You have one era in which he was this creature of the night stalking criminals from the shadows. That's the way he was created. The dark, gritty Batman. Then in the mid-40s, well into the late 50s and early 60s, you kind of had a guy who was punting his way through crime with his young partner Robin, as they were jumping over the giant keys of giant typewriters and facing a grotesque rogues gallery of supervillains. You've had the character in the 60s as a campy, pow zap wham character that was there primarily for reasons of comedy, not to be laughed with, but to be laughed at. You've had in the 1990s a cold, dark, almost soulless, almost vampiric Batman. You've had Frank Miller's deconstruction of Batman in 1986 with The Dark Knight Returns that showed a real bitter, deeply affected man who has no choice but to play out his role in life and to do what he swore he would do over the bodies of his parents when he was a kid, which was to get the guy who did this and get all the bad guys, even if he had to walk through hell for the rest of his life in order to do it. So the comic books alone have presented us with so many vastly different interpretations of Batman from one extreme to the other. So the important thing when it all comes down to it is respect the integrity of the character. Fans do not like their characters made fun of. They really don't. They take them seriously, and deservedly so. And do all superheroes and comic book movies have to be dark and gritty like Batman because Batman's successful? No. Because many of them are not meant to be that way. I love the first Iron Man. I thought it was such a fun time. I saw it twice opening weekend. It doesn't have to be dark and gritty. It just has to respect the integrity of that particular character. Otherwise, and believe me, it would have happened by now, Hollywood would have given us Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, thinking that would make more money. So, that's the best way I can kind of sum up the approach to this.